My 73rd birthday. A quiet day, a lifetime of echoes. Today I turned 73. I woke up at 6 as I always do, though there's no real reason to anymore. The habit of early rising is etched into me after decades of needing to open the hardware store by 8. Clive used to say getting up early was a sign of discipline. Clive said a lot of things. Most of it, I later learned, was just that, words. I got out of the bed I've slept in alone for the past 10 years and went to the window. Frankfurt was waking up slowly, in the same way it has for 50 years. Bert, the old letter carrier, was already making his morning rounds. Mrs. Hamilton was walking her pug. The lights were glowing behind the fogged-up window of Jenkins' bakery. A scene I've watched for half a century, though the faces have changed. Bert's father used to deliver the mail. Mrs. Hamilton once had a cat instead of a dog, and the Jenkins were still Mr. and Mrs., not their grown-up children. And I was a young mother then, not this gray-haired woman squinting at her reflection in the glass. That reflection stares back with blunt honesty. Gray hair, left undyed these past 5 years. Wrinkles no longer masked by foundation. Hands veined and twisted by arthritis and decades of lifting paint cans, hauling wallpaper rolls, and dragging boxes of nails across concrete floors. My body is a ledger of labor, of years spent running a store while raising 3 children and holding together a crumbling marriage. The phone beside my bed remained silent. I didn't expect much. Marilyn usually sends a belated card. Patrick may toss me a happy birthday on Facebook. Edwin, he might call, but only if he needs something. Last year, it was money for a stereo. I wrapped myself in my old robe and padded into the kitchen. The fridge was nearly empty, as usual. Cooking for one never inspires much effort. Still, it was my birthday. I took out an egg, a slice of cheese, the last tomato. I decided on an omelette, a small gesture of self-care. While it sizzled in the pan, my mind wandered, as it often does these days, to the past. I was only 18 when I met Clive Talbot at a local school dance. He was 22, back from the army, striking in his uniform, all confidence and grand stories. I, the small-town girl, listened starry-eyed. We married 3 months later. A year after that, Marilyn was born. I can still recall holding her for the first time. So tiny, so utterly dependent. Clive was overjoyed, and even more so when Patrick came along. A son, a namesake. We were cramped in the tiny apartment above the store Clive inherited from his father, but we were young and hopeful. Edwin arrived when I was 25, a surprise blessing. But by then, Clive had started drinking, not enough to call it a problem, not yet, but the whiskey had begun to creep into our daily lives. The store was struggling, and his frustrations became mine. I started working more hours, leaving the children with my mother until she became ill, and I was suddenly pulled in 3 directions. Clive was out more often than he was home, and when he did return, it was with slurred apologies or harsh, careless words. He never raised a hand to me, but sometimes, words bruised deeper than fists. I remember Marilyn asking me at 12 why I didn't leave him. I told her, because family comes first, honey. But the truth was simpler and sadder. I had no way to support 3 children alone. I had no education, no savings, and no real help. My mother died not long after, leaving me with only a few photographs and a worn Bible. The omelette burned while I stood lost in thought. I turned off the stove and transferred it onto a plate anyway. A burnt birthday breakfast. Seemed fitting, really. My life has always felt just moments away from being something more, something better, only to go a little wrong at the very last second. Marilyn became the driven one. Sharp, stubborn, and brilliant. She flew through school, earned a scholarship to law school, and left town without looking back. Now she's an attorney in Chicago with 2 beautiful children I've only seen through filtered photos on social media. Patrick, sweet and quiet, never asked for much. He finished community college, got a steady job at an insurance company, married a kind woman named Diary. They live 2 hours away and call once a year, maybe. Then there's Edwin, my beautiful boy with dimples and charm so effortless it felt like magic when he was small. Clive called him my little prince, even as he handed him over to me so he could disappear into the bar again. Edwin learned early that a smile could be currency. It worked on me, on his teachers, on girls. He changed majors, colleges, and jobs like shirts. He always landed back here when the money ran out. I finished my tea and glanced at the clock. Nearly 8. Time to get ready for book club, the one regular joy in my routine. We meet weekly at the library, a group of women over 60, dissecting stories no one under that age would ever find interesting. I climbed the stairs slowly, knees aching. The doctor says I need surgery, but who would take care of me after? Edwin. I laughed under my breath. Clive has been gone 10 years now. A heart attack took him in the store, right between the aisles of paint cans and tools. I found him lying flat on his back, eyes open and vacant. After the funeral, I sold the store. It was just enough to clear the debts and squirrel away a bit for old age. I dressed in a navy blue outfit, pinned the pearl brooch Clive gave me for our 20th anniversary, a rare kind gesture. Hair pulled back, a touch of lipstick, my only vanity. Then the phone rang. My heart leapt, but it wasn't one of my children. It was Janet from the book club. Meetings cancelled. Margaret's sick and Elizabeth's visiting family. I told her it was okay, but when I hung up, I sat down again, feeling that familiar hollowness. So I looked around for something to fill the time. Maybe a walk. Maybe the market. Maybe just the television. Then my eyes fell on an old photo on the dresser. It was from a family picnic. Marilyn with pigtails and a serious look. Patrick grinning with 2 missing teeth and a bandaged knee. Edwin, small and happy, sitting on my lap. And Clive, sober, smiling, one hand resting lightly on my shoulder. I remember that day. Roasting hot dogs over coals, laughing until we cried at Clive's bad jokes. That was before everything fractured. Before Marilyn grew ashamed. Before Patrick turned into background noise. Before Edwin learned to twist hearts. The phone rang again. This time, my cell. I knew the voice the moment I heard it. Edwin. My heart wobbled, as it always does with him. Happy birthday, Mom, he said brightly. Sorry it's early, I've got a packed day. Listen, I'm coming to see you this weekend, okay? There's something important to talk about. I knew that tone. It used to mean he failed an exam. Then it meant he lost a job. These days, it often meant a request for money. Of course, darling, I said. I'd love to see you. He paused, then added, and I'm not coming alone. I'm bringing someone. Someone special. A girlfriend. Of course. He's introduced me to several. The French waitress, the aspiring actress, the yoga instructor. None stayed. She's the one, Mom. The woman of my life. He hung up before I could respond. Always in a rush. Always gone too soon. I sat there for a long time, trying not to let the old ache settle too deep. Then I pushed myself up and headed to the closet. Since book club was off, I'd use the time to sort through old boxes. I came across a dusty scrapbook filled with my children's drawings. Bright scribbles, sunbeams, crooked stick figures with hearts above their heads. In one, Edwin had drawn me holding his hand. The figure of me was impossibly tall, crowned in golden hair, beaming. At the bottom in shaky, earnest letters, it said, "My mom is the best." When did he stop thinking that? When did I stop being a heroine in his eyes and become just an ATM machine? I remembered the overtime hours I worked to pay for his soccer uniforms, the way I denied myself new clothes so I could buy him the latest sneakers he desperately wanted. I thought of the nights I sat up, bleary-eyed, helping him with his homework even when my body ached from the day. And then came college. 1, 2, 3 different attempts. Mom, this isn't my thing. I want to try something else. I agreed every time, footing the bills, trusting he'd eventually find his calling. I remembered the night Clive yelled at me for spoiling Edwin. "You're making a slacker out of him," he shouted, waving a bottle. But I'd replied quietly, "I just want him to have the opportunities we never had." And what came of it? Marilyn, who put herself through law school, now barely speaks to me. Patrick, my steady one, the one who never asked for much, only calls on holidays. And Edwin, who I poured the most love, money, and time into, treats it all like an expectation. I closed the photo album and slid it back into the closet. There was no point in lingering on regret. What's done is done. The rest of the day passed in silence and routine. Laundry, sweeping, cleaning the kitchen, preparing lunch I would eat alone. I sat by the window, watching birds hop across the backyard fence, then later turned on an old movie, half-watched it, and picked up the novel for next week's book club. The phone never rang. Not once. Neither Marilyn nor Patrick remembered my birthday. Or maybe they did, and just didn't bother to call. Before bed, I took the usual pills. One for blood pressure, one for arthritis, one for sleep. I glanced at Clive's photo on the nightstand. "Look what our life has become," I whispered to his smiling face. "You're gone, and I'm left here, alone in a house filled with echoes, with children who barely remember me." Clive, even in life, was never much of a talker. I turned off the lamp and stared into the dark, the numbness of sleep slowly overtaking me. Edwin would be arriving this weekend, along with the woman he now called the love of his life. I wondered what she would be like. I hoped truly that this one wouldn't break his heart like the others. I hoped he wouldn't come to me in tears, asking to be fixed again. And above all, I hoped she'd be good to him, and maybe, just maybe, good to me too. Saturday morning was unusually sunny for late October. I was up early, sleep and I had long stopped being friends. With first light came the flurry of preparation. The whole house was spotless. I'd scrubbed, dusted, polished, not for royalty, but for my son, who once lived amid cluttered socks and pizza boxes, but who now seemed to expect linen napkins and a welcoming feast. I made his favorite apple pie, baked chicken with rosemary and thyme, and potato salad from my mother's old recipe. I even set the table with the good tablecloth, the one Clive and I used only on holidays. At exactly 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. Punctual, a rare trait for Edwin, who was usually an hour late. I smoothed the front of my dress, patted my hair, and opened the door. There he stood, handsome as ever, wearing a suit that probably cost more than he could afford. And beside him was a tall, slender blonde with icy blue eyes, flawless makeup, and a diamond necklace that sparkled far too extravagantly for a visit to her boyfriend's mother. "Mom," Edwin said with exaggerated warmth as he hugged me tightly, "you look beautiful. I'd like you to meet Priscilla. Priscilla Hart, the love of my life." She offered a manicured hand, her smile poised and polished. "Mrs. Talbot, it's so nice to finally meet you. Edwin has told me so much about you." Her voice was soft and melodic, but something in its tone made my instincts twitch, too polished, too practiced. Years of customer service had taught me to recognize when I was being condescended to. "Please come in," I said, stepping aside. "Lunch is almost ready." As they entered, I saw Priscilla scan the living room, her gaze lingering on the old couch, the well-worn rug, the family photos in cheap frames. There was a flicker in her eyes. Disappointment, perhaps? "What a cozy home," she said, her voice bright but hollow. "Thank you," I replied, watching her closely. "Clive and I bought it 45 years ago. It's full of memories." "Clive is Edwin's father?" she asked, though I was sure Edwin had already told her. "Yes, my late husband." "Oh, I'm sorry." Edwin said it happened a long time ago. 10 years, I said, then turned to my son. Edwin, why don't you show Priscilla around while I finish up? He nodded, grateful for the escape. Sure, Mom. Come on, honey. Let me show you where my childhood was. I returned to the kitchen, listening to their footsteps upstairs, their muffled voices. Something about her unsettled me, not just the way she looked at our house, but the way she looked at Edwin. Not like a woman in love. More like a woman assessing an investment. 15 minutes later, they came back down, and I invited them to the table. Priscilla sat with an impeccably straight posture, as if held up by invisible wires. Edwin sat close to her, casting her nervous glances laced with admiration. Everything looks delicious, Mrs. Talbot, she said, placing a minuscule spoonful of salad on her plate. Mama's the best cook in the world, Edwin added quickly. You have to try her apple pie. I follow a gluten-free diet, Priscilla said sweetly, though the rejection stung more than it should have. But I'm sure the pie is wonderful. I saw Edwin's shoulders sag. He'd always taken small things too hard. I tried to lighten the mood. So how did you two meet? I asked. Edwin perked up, eager to tell it. It was like a movie. Mom, remember I got that job at the advertising firm 3 months ago? Priscilla's the senior creative director there. She came into my office one day for some paperwork. I dropped a pile of folders. She helped me pick them up, and our hands touched. And I thought this clumsy newcomer was charming as hell, Priscilla finished smoothly, offering that same tight smile. And it turned out we had so much in common. Yes, it's unbelievable, Edwin gushed. We both love Italian food, Woody Allen movies, and traveling. I nearly chuckled. Edwin had never left the state except for a wedding once, and his idea of Italian food was pepperoni pizza and reheated pasta. But I held my tongue. Lovers tend to mold their preferences around each other. It wasn't worth the correction. What do you do at the firm, Edwin? I asked, though I already knew. Something junior. I'm the assistant client services manager, he said, puffing up his chest a little. But my boss Greg hinted at a promotion. Edwin is a very promising employee, Priscilla added, and this time, there was something genuine in her voice. A rare note of sincerity. He certainly had potential. I was honestly glad to hear that. Truly glad. Maybe this girl really was a good influence on him. And what do you do, Priscilla? Creative director? That sounds impressive, I said, trying to bridge a genuine connection. I'm responsible for developing advertising campaigns for our key clients, she replied, sitting up even straighter, if that were even possible. Mostly luxury brands, jewelry companies, designer fashion, high-end real estate. Her voice carried the casual pride of someone used to admiration. I hold a master's degree in marketing from Princeton and a design degree from Parsons School of Design. Impressive, I said sincerely, because it truly was. And how old are you, if it's no secret? 32, she replied with a dazzling smile that clearly added, and I look fantastic for my age, don't I? I did the math quickly in my head. Edwin was 28. The age gap was nothing significant, but the difference in their achievements, it was hard not to notice. But what did it matter? If they were happy, that was all that counted. And you're in a committed relationship? I asked, even though their closeness made it obvious. Edwin and Priscilla exchanged that knowing, almost smug glance again, and Edwin took her hand gently. Actually, Mom, he began, eyes shining, we have news for you. We're engaged, Priscilla finished, lifting her left hand to show off an enormous diamond ring that caught the light like a star. I nearly choked on a piece of chicken. 3 months. They'd only known each other for 3 months, and they were already engaged. That's wonderful, I managed to say, forcing the words through a smile. Congratulations to both of you. Thank you, Mom. Edwin beamed, radiant with joy. I knew you'd be happy. We're planning to get married in the spring.
So soon.
I couldn't hide my surprise. April 16th, Priscilla clarified, clearly pleased with how well organized everything already was. It's the perfect time for the wedding we're planning.
Everything is nearly in place.
You're very quick, I murmured, reaching for more salad just to have something to do with my hands.
When it's meant to be, why wait?
Edwin said, lifting her hand to his lips and kissing her fingers. She smiled at him with that same composed, cold smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. And where will the wedding be held? I asked, bracing myself for an answer I already knew I wouldn't like. At the Golden Oaks Country Club, Priscilla replied, satisfaction evident in her voice. It's the most prestigious venue in the area. Stunning ballroom, lakeside views, beautiful gardens for the photo shoots. I'd heard of Golden Oaks. That kind of place didn't even let people like me through the front gate. Membership alone cost tens of thousands annually, and renting it for an event? Astronomical. Sounds expensive, I said cautiously. It's worth it, Priscilla replied without hesitation. We want our day to be truly special. You have no idea, Mom, Edwin added, clearly thrilled. It's going to be the wedding of the year. 300 guests, some of Priscilla's celebrity clients, a live band, a 5-tiered cake by the best pastry chef in town, fireworks over the lake. 300 guests? I blinked.
Edwin, you don't even know that many people.
They're mostly Priscilla's colleagues, business associates, friends, he shrugged. Important connections for our future. And I thought weddings were for the nearest and dearest, I muttered. Times have changed, Mrs. Talbot, Priscilla said, her voice gentle but patronizing. Modern weddings are social occasions, opportunities to network, to leave a lasting impression. I said nothing. Any argument I could offer would be dismissed as old-fashioned. What about your dress? I asked, trying to stay engaged in the conversation. That, finally, sparked a little genuine excitement in Priscilla. Oh, it's something special. An exclusive Vera Wang design, made just for me. I'm flying to New York next week for my first fitting. Even I knew that Vera Wang didn't come cheap. Those gowns cost tens of thousands, minimum.
And you, Edwin?
I turned to him. An exclusive design too? Tom Ford tux. He puffed up proudly. Priscilla says it's the best choice for a groom with my looks. I nodded, trying not to think about the price tag. Who was I to judge if they could afford it? And we've ordered some amazing floral arrangements, Priscilla continued. Orchids and roses flown in from around the world. And every guest will get a personalized engraved silver box and a bottle of Dom Perignon, Edwin added, grinning. I stopped chewing. My fork hovered in midair. Something was not adding up. A month ago, Edwin had asked me for a $500 loan to fix his car. Now he was planning a wedding that looked like something out of a celebrity magazine. Pardon my indiscretion, but how much is all this going to cost? I asked, deciding it was time for honesty. They exchanged a glance, this time not just knowing, but tight with something else. Something unspoken. About 300,000, Edwin said finally. But it's worth it, Mom. It's a once-in-a-lifetime day. 300,000. I felt lightheaded. That kind of money doesn't just appear out of nowhere. Who's going to pay for this wedding? I asked, my voice thinner than I wanted. There was a pause. Edwin cleared his throat and looked away. Well, actually, Mom, we thought you could help us with this. I stared. Me?
Edwin, I don't have that kind of money. But you have savings, he said, finally meeting my eyes.
The house is all paid off. You could take out a loan against it. A home equity loan? I asked, cold creeping into my limbs. You want me to risk the roof over my head for your wedding? It's not a risk, Mom, Edwin said like he was explaining something to a confused child. It's an investment in our future. With the people we'll meet, I'll finally move up in my career. I can pay you back, with interest.
Edwin, I tried to stay calm.
You've had 5 jobs in 3 years. How can I believe that promise? This time is different. He gripped Priscilla's hand. I have her now. I found my calling in advertising. Priscilla nodded serenely. Mrs. Talbot, I understand your concerns, but this wedding is a crucial step in our professional and social advancement. And, Edwin added in a softer, guilt-laced voice, this is what mothers do, Mom. They pay for their children's weddings. It's tradition. Tradition says the bride's family pays, I replied, though I knew I was grasping at straws. That's outdated, Priscilla said smoothly. Today, whoever can afford it does. My parents are gone, she added. All I have is an aunt who struggles to get by.
And Dad left nothing, Edwin said quickly.
It's just you, Mom. And I know you've got money after selling the store. I felt anger stir beneath my ribs. Edwin, the money from the store went to pay off your father's debts and secure a small bit of comfort for me in old age. I don't have the luxury to throw $300,000 at a single day. But it's my wedding, he burst out, his voice cracking with something childlike and sharp. Don't you want me to be happy? I have 3 children, I said quietly. I want all of you to be happy. But happiness doesn't come with a price tag. That's what you think. He folded his arms, eyes glinting. You've never cared about status or success. Look at this house. The furniture. No ambition. His words pierced deep. How many nights had I stayed up, budgeting down to the last cent, just to feed him and clothe him? How many times had I sacrificed, silently, so he could have the latest sneakers or video games? Edwin, I said, my voice trembling, I gave my life to you and your siblings. I don't regret a second of it. But now I'm 73. I have arthritis, high blood pressure. My savings are my safety net in case I get sick.
We'll take care of you, Edwin said quickly, but there was no certainty in his eyes.
How? I asked. You can't even take care of yourself. He opened his mouth to argue, but Priscilla gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Mrs. Talbot, she said sweetly, her tone now cold and polished, perhaps you don't realize how important this wedding is. It's not just a party. It's a strategic investment.
In what?
I challenged. In image. In reputation. In building a future, she said firmly. This is how the world works now.
And, Edwin added, his voice tinged with guilt again, you always said you'd do anything for me.
I looked at them, the son I'd loved unconditionally, and the poised, ambitious woman he was about to marry, and I finally saw it. They belonged to a world where glitter meant more than heart. I can't give you $300,000, I said, standing tall. That's all I have. I could help with something modest. Photographer, maybe the flowers. Photographer or flowers? Edwin shot to his feet, red with rage. Are you suggesting we settle for second best when you could give us the best? I don't have that kind of money, I said firmly. And if this marriage means more than just a show, it shouldn't matter. Don't lecture me, he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. You've always been selfish. I flinched. After everything I'd done, this was what he believed? Edwin, Priscilla said calmly. Let's go. Your mother's made her stance clear. Yes, he said, exhaling. There's nothing more to discuss. Please, Edwin. I reached out. Let's talk about this calmly. Maybe we can find a compromise. A compromise? He scoffed. You've made it clear that my happiness means nothing to you. That's not true, I whispered through tears. I just can't lose everything for one day. One day that defines our entire future, Priscilla snapped. But of course, you wouldn't understand that, Mrs. Talbot. They turned for the door. I followed, desperate. Edwin, don't leave like this. Please. He paused, turned. His eyes were hard, but sad. You'll regret this, he said. When you see the wedding in magazines and realize what you missed, it'll be too late. I reached out, but he turned away and walked out toward the car, where Priscilla waited, perfectly composed, perfectly cold. I stood on the doorstep, watching them drive away, and felt another part of my life quietly crumble. Everything I had done, all the sacrifices, all the years of putting my children first, and this was how it turned out. My son believed I was selfish simply because I refused to gamble away my future on his extravagant wedding. The door shut behind them, cutting off the last echo of their departure, and I was left alone in the hollow quiet of the house, where the dining table still sat set for what was supposed to be a celebratory dinner but had dissolved into disaster. The apple pie, Edwin's favorite, remained untouched on the counter, its scent now a bitter reminder. In the 3 days that followed Edwin's visit, I moved through the house in a daze. I slammed cupboard doors, prepared meals I couldn't bring myself to eat, and wandered through old photo albums where Edwin still smiled at me without bitterness, without calculation. The phone stayed silent. Edwin didn't call, and I hesitated to call him first. What would I say? My decision remained unchanged, and I wasn't about to apologize for refusing to jeopardize my stability for what felt like a fantasy more than a necessity. On the 4th day, the phone finally rang. I rushed to pick it up, my heart foolishly hoping it might be an apology. "Mom, it's me," Edwin said, his voice oddly calm, so calm it made my stomach turn. "Edwin, I'm glad you called." I began, but he cut me off. "I'm not calling for small talk," he said coldly. "I've spoken with Priscilla, and we've decided to give you another chance." Another chance? As if I were the one who had done something wrong. "Edwin, I've already explained my position," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I just don't have that kind of money." "Listen to me carefully, Mother," he snapped. "I know you have savings. I know you could take out a loan against the house. You just don't want to help your own son." "Edwin, No. Now you listen to me." His voice hardened like steel. "Remember when I gave up my internship in Boston to help you after Dad died? When I stayed behind while Marilyn and Patrick didn't even show up to sort his things?" But I remembered it differently. Edwin hadn't given up the internship. He'd been rejected. I found the letter tucked behind a stack of old newspapers, and during that time, he'd done very little to help. He was constantly making excuses, slipping away for hours. "I remember, Edwin," I said carefully, "but do you remember when I had knee surgery 3 years ago? Who took me to the doctor then?" "Not you. It was Patrick who came every day. Marilyn couldn't make it, but she paid for the nurse and called constantly." "That's a lie," he barked. "It's not," I replied quietly. "You came with me to the hospital once, then disappeared for a week. I'm the only one who's always been there for you," he screamed, his voice cracking with rage. "And now, when I ask for help, just once, you turn your back on me." "Edwin," I said, trying to stay calm, "I am grateful. But $300,000 isn't just help. That's my life savings. It's my security, my only safety net. And who's going to take care of you in your old age, if not your children?" he said, cold and calculated. "But if you won't help us now, why should we help you later?" His words were pure blackmail. My hands trembled with anger as I clenched the receiver. "Are you threatening me, Edwin? You're saying if I don't pay for your wedding, you'll abandon me?" "I'm just stating facts. Relationships go both ways, Mom. You don't help me, I don't help you. Fair is fair." "That's not how I raised you," I said, the words catching in my throat. I taught you to help others not for what you get in return, but because it's right.
Save your sermons, mother, he sneered, and I could practically see the contempt curling on his lips.
The world's changed. Sentiment is for those who can afford it. I can't believe you actually think that, I whispered. Believe it. And believe this, if you don't change your mind, Priscilla and I will sue you. Sue? My knees weakened. I could barely breathe. You can't be serious. Oh, we're serious. We've got witnesses who'll testify that you promised to pay for my wedding when I was 16. That promise is enforceable. I never made such a promise. I cried. Word against word, he said, smug and unyielding. And who do you think the court will believe? A young couple starting a life, or an old woman who maybe just forgotten what she said? You're lying, Edwin. You're actually planning to lie in court. I'm planning to do whatever it takes, he said with a chilling finality. You've got a week to change your mind. And then he hung up. I stood there, the phone slipping from my hand, the silence around me now deafening. My son was threatening me with a lawsuit, lying, manipulating, willing to drag me to court over a fantasy wedding. The week passed in a blur of sleepless nights, the same conversation playing in my head like a broken record. Where had I gone wrong in raising him? What had I done to deserve this? Then, on the 8th day, the doorbell rang. A young man in a crisp suit stood at my door holding a folder. Mrs. Rowena Talbot? He asked in a formal tone. Yes, that's me. You've been served. He handed me the envelope. The plaintiffs are Edwin Talbot and Priscilla Hart. Charges include breach of oral contract and infliction of emotional distress. Hearing is in 3 weeks at Frankfort Town Court. I took the envelope with numb hands. The man gave a polite nod and walked away. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move. He'd really done it. My own son had actually sued me. I stumbled into the living room and sank into the chair, still clutching the legal envelope. Emotional distress. Oral contract. The words swirled around my head, incomprehensible and cruel. I don't know how long I sat there, but by the time I moved again, the window had gone dark. I needed to do something. But what? I couldn't afford a lawyer. I didn't know the first thing about defending myself. Then it hit me. Marilyn. My eldest daughter. A civil attorney. We hadn't been close in years, not since she'd accused me of failing to leave Clive when his drinking spiraled. But right now, none of that mattered. I needed help. I glanced at the clock. Almost 10. It was late, but I had no choice. My fingers shook as I dialed her number. After 5 rings, she answered. Marilyn Talbot. Marilyn, it's Mom. I tried to keep my voice from breaking. A long pause. Then, Mom? What's wrong? You never call this late. I need your help, I whispered. Edwin is suing me. What? Her voice sharpened. Edwin sued you? For what? I told her everything. About his visit. About the money. About the threat. About the subpoena. She listened in stunned silence, asking short, precise questions now and then. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then she muttered one word. Bastard. Marilyn, don't talk like that about your brother, I said automatically, though my heart echoed the word. Mom, he's blackmailing you. Suing you on a fake promise. What else should I call him? She sighed. I'm flying in tomorrow. I want to see the documents and talk face to face. You're coming. I could hardly believe it. But what about your job, the kids? I'll take a few days off. James will manage. This is serious, Mom. I won't let Edwin get away with this. Tears welled in my eyes. Thank you, darling. I don't know what I'd do without you. Don't thank me yet, she said with her lawyer's edge. Not until I win the case. I'll land at 7. Meet me at the airport. I'll be there. And Marilyn, thank you. I'm sorry it took something like this. I'm glad you called, Mom, she said softly. Me too. The next evening, I met her at the airport. She looked different than I remembered, stronger, sharper. Her tailored suit fit her like a glove, her short haircut gave her a modern, polished look, and she moved with a quiet, collected power. Mom, she said, hugging me tight. Her perfume was soft and expensive. You've lost weight. You look tired. The past few weeks haven't been easy, I admitted, managing a small smile. But seeing you, it helps. On the way home, she asked question after question. When Edwin introduced Priscilla, exactly what they said, what words they used about the money. She jotted everything in a neat leather notebook, frowning now and then. Back at the house, I handed her the summons. She examined it closely, flipping through the pages. They're asking for $300,000 in damages and court costs, she muttered, scanning the text. Claims, breach of oral contract and emotional distress. Apparently, you promised to pay for his wedding when he was 16, and they're calling that part of your family agreement. I never made such a promise, I exclaimed. Maybe I said something vague like, you'll have a beautiful wedding one day. But not this. Not a binding commitment to fund a fantasy. I believe you, Mom, she said, squeezing my hand. And the court will, too. Oral contracts must be specific and mutually agreed upon. And trust me, we're going to expose every lie he's telling. For the first time in days, I felt something flicker inside me, something like hope. At dinner, Patrick raised his glass and toasted to Mom, our steadfast rock, who had always held us together without ever asking for anything in return. We're sorry, Mom, he said sincerely, but things will be different now. Everyone joined in, even the children, who clinked their juice glasses and earnestly echoed the sentiment to their grandmother. Later that evening, when the kids had gone to bed and we were seated in the living room with warm cups of tea, Marilyn spoke up. Her voice trembled slightly, as if she'd been holding something inside for years. Mom, she began, I want to apologize for all these years of distance between us. I was so angry with you for not leaving Dad when his drinking became unbearable. Back then, I saw it as weakness. But now, I realize it was strength. Strength to stay and protect us, to keep things together no matter what. She reached for my hand. I squeezed hers gently. You don't need to apologize, dear. We all do what we think is right. I never held a grudge. Patrick chimed in, his eyes lowered. I owe you an apology too, Mom. I wasn't around the way I should have been. I blamed work, the kids, the house. But if I'm honest, I didn't want to witness you aging while Edwin took advantage of your kindness. You both had your lives to manage, I said, trying to ease their guilt. You had your families, your responsibilities. That's only natural. But you're our family too, Marilyn said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. And we're not going to forget that again. We talked for hours after that, reminiscing about old times, sharing memories, laughing at long-forgotten mishaps, and making plans for the future. For the first time in years, I felt my older children weren't just present in body, but truly there with me, heart and soul. The next morning at breakfast, Marilyn made an announcement. I've taken a month off work. I want to stay here with you, Mom. We've got so much to catch up on. Tears welled in my eyes. But your job, your family. James will take care of the kids, she said with a smile. They'll come visit on weekends. And I can handle a few work things remotely. It'll be fine. Patrick, too, had taken time off. I've decided to take a week off as well, he said. DRI and the kids are going to stay, too. The house will be full, like the old days. I couldn't believe the joy flooding my heart. After so many lonely years, the house was once again alive, with voices, laughter, and warmth. About a week after the trial, a letter arrived from Edwin. It was short, just a few sentences. "Mom, I don't know if I'll ever be able to atone for what I've done, but I will try. Priscilla's gone. I think it's for the best. I'm starting fresh." There was no apology, no mention of repayment. But I hadn't expected one. Just the fact that Edwin had admitted fault was a step in the right direction. "Give him time," Marilyn said gently when I showed her the letter. "He has a lot to work through." I nodded. No matter what Edwin had done, he was still my son. I couldn't stop loving him. Not long after, the local newspaper ran a story about our case under the headline, "Mother Wins Lawsuit Against Son Who Demanded Wedding Money." A young journalist named Haley Ramirez reached out for an interview. I agreed, hoping my experience might help others in similar situations. "Mrs. Talbot," she asked during the interview, "what advice would you give to other parents whose adult children ask for financial support?" I thought carefully. Love your children. Help them when you can, but never at the cost of your own well-being. You're entitled to your plans, your peace, your future. True love should never be one-sided. The article sparked unexpected responses. Letters and calls came in from strangers, some sharing similar stories, others offering support. One day, Janet, a woman from my book club, approached me. "You should be our leader," she said. "You've got a lifetime of experience and wisdom, and you love books." And so, I became the leader of our book club at the local library. We met once a week, discussing literature, but also sharing our lives and learning from one another. Most members were older like me, but slowly, younger people joined. It was heartening to see different generations find common ground through stories. Marilyn watched my growing involvement with pride. "Mom, you've always loved teaching. You should lead workshops at the community center." I laughed at first. "Me? I'm just a simple woman with a college degree. What could I teach anyone?" "You ran a store for decades," she reminded me. "You're a fantastic cook, you knit, and you know everything about this town. You have so much to give." I thought it over and eventually applied to teach a course at the community center, Home Economics for Modern Living. I was shocked when they accepted my application enthusiastically. Even more surprising, 15 people came to the first class. Teenagers, young mothers, even a few men. "In school, we learn algebra and chemistry," one young woman said. "But no one teaches us how to budget, cook, or patch clothes." That's how I became a teacher. I taught 2 classes a week, sharing practical skills and life lessons. Watching my students light up with new confidence was deeply fulfilling. With Edwin having paid only a small portion of what he owed, I decided to use some of the court-awarded money for myself. For so long, I had denied myself even small pleasures. Now it was time to live. My first indulgence was a lifelong dream, a trip to Europe. Marilyn helped me plan a 2-week tour of Italy and France. I was nervous about going alone, so Patrick suggested his eldest son, Miles, accompany me. "It'll be good for him to travel and bond with his grandmother," he said. "And you'll feel more comfortable." That trip became one of the most vivid experiences of my life. Seeing the Colosseum, the Eiffel Tower, walking through narrow cobbled streets, and tasting authentic pasta and croissants, it was surreal. Sharing it with Miles made it even more special. "You know, Grandma," he said one evening in a small Roman cafe, "I used to think old people were boring. But you're not like that. You're cool." I laughed, touched. "Thank you, darling. But remember, it's not age that makes us interesting or dull. It's our attitude toward life." When I returned, everything had changed. My once quiet home was now filled with voices: children, grandchildren, book club friends, and students. Marilyn, though back in Chicago, called daily and visited monthly. Patrick and his family came every weekend. Even Edwin began making efforts, a short phone call here, a hesitant visit there. He had taken a new, modest but stable job and was slowly paying off his debt in small, steady amounts. "I don't expect you to repay it all," I told him once. "What matters more is that you're trying to make things right." He looked down. I was a terrible son. "No," I said gently. "You were a troubled man. But you're still my son. And I love you." That conversation marked the beginning of our slow journey toward healing. We didn't speak of Priscilla. I had learned from Marilyn that she had broken off the engagement the day after the trial, once it was clear there'd be no lavish wedding. A month later, she was engaged to the son of a wealthy construction company owner. Edwin had been used. "Are you hurting?" I asked him once. "It did hurt," he admitted. "But I've realized now, she never loved me. She loved what she thought I could give her. I was just a means to an end." I held him close, feeling him soften in my arms for the first time in years. A year after the trial, we gathered for my 74th birthday. The house was brimming with joy, children running in the yard, friends laughing over drinks, and even Judge Willis stopped by. "You've been an inspiration, Mrs. Talbot," he said warmly. "Your story reminds us that it's never too late to start living for yourself." I looked around the room. Marilyn deep in conversation with my students, Patrick playing with the kids, Edwin quietly observing, but present. Miles showing trip photos to his cousins. I realized that the life I thought had ended had just transformed. I was no longer just a mother, a widow, a grandmother. I was Rowena Talbot, a teacher, a traveler, a leader. A woman who had finally learned to value herself as deeply as she had valued everyone else. That evening, I stepped onto the porch, the sunset painting the sky in soft golds and pinks. This was the same Frankfurt I'd lived in my whole life, a town that had once only seen me as Clive's wife or the owner of a little store. Now, it saw me as someone who had reclaimed her life. Marilyn joined me, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "What are you thinking, Mom?" I smiled at the horizon. That sometimes, the end of one story becomes the beginning of another, an even better one. She pulled me into a hug. And together, we stood in silence, watching the day yield to night, and the past give way to the future.